The Bechdel Test, used to determine if there's adequate female presence in a movie, is flawed. The original test was designed based on a one-shot comic strip. A lesbian character describes how she never sees any movie that doesn't pass 3 restrictions. It has to have 2 women in it who talk to each other about something other than a man. I, however, heard of the Bechdel test from TV tropes, which had a different version. It needed to have 2 named women who have a conversation with each other about something other than a man or men. And then there was a discussion about what a conversation entailed. And the consensus is that it needed to be a discussion between those women alone. A man could be present, but he must not be an active participant. The original Bechdel test counted alien as passing, because Ripley and Lambert talked to each other about the alien. But this new TV tropes Bechdel test wouldn't work, because Ripley and Lambert only talk to each other in a larger conversation in which many men are present. Based on this, I'm inclined to think that it's too restrictive. I also think that the subject matter is a little too rigid. They can't talk about a man or men, but they can talk about the alien. However, the alien is symbolically masculine. If you look at H.R. Giger's design for the thing, it was designed to be extremely phallic. Its head is like a giant penis. Its tail is a penis. Its mouth is a penis. There's all this penises. And it's a creature of rape. It rapes the guy by injecting the egg into his throat, and then the chest burster is this other penis-shaped thing that bursts out of its chest, and then it's stalking the crew members is kind of sexual. So even though the alien itself may not be male, it is symbolically male. And then in Aliens, we have the Queen, that retroactively makes the drone in Alien male. I mean, you could say that the alien is just an animal. It doesn't have intelligence, so it's not really a man, but that's also hard to determine. It's not really addressed whether or not the creature in Alien has any intelligence. I mean, they assume it doesn't, but maybe it does. It's more just an alien threat. And then in Aliens, it's hinted that the aliens can plan. The Queen seems a bit smarter than the drones, but the drones are implied to have cut the power deliberately, or at least it's ambiguous whether or not they did. And then in Alien Resurrection, the drones are shown to be intelligent planners. So retroactively from Alien Resurrection, you could say that the drone in Alien is an intelligent being, and thus basically a man. He's not a human man, but an alien man, an alien male. It's too simplistic to just dismiss the creature in Alien as the monster. For analysis of science fiction films, real thorough analysis, you can't just use the original Bechdel test. You have to make exceptions. You have to say, this counts as a man or it doesn't. But why? Why would it not? I would say that it does count as a man. In my Bechdel test, Bechdel 2.0, I wouldn't count the alien as just the monster. Bechdel 2.0, alien doesn't pass. And then there's the issue of communication. They talk about a man. What about nonverbal communication? I mean, if no one can speak in a movie made for deaf people, everyone communicates using sign language, I think that most people would just consider that talking and have the Bechdel test given leniency, so that if 2 women sign about anything other than a man, that would count. But in other cases, the original concept for 9 had the dolls not talking. They just blinked, gestured, and played little movies as flashbacks. Would that count if a female doll waved at another doll about the monster? I think it should. I think that if you don't speak, then how you communicate should count. But this is less apparent in movies where there's nonverbal communication and verbal communication. I mean, in WALL-E, the robots don't talk to each other very much. They do sometimes. But there's a significant amount of nonverbal communication between Wall-E and Eve. In the case of that, where the robot's primary form of communication is nonverbal, but they can speak sometimes, I think that should count, even though there's plenty of other robots and humans who are talking to each other in the same film. Now in Serenity, there's a moment where River and Zoe have this exchange through facial expression and gesture. River identifies someone who's going to attack. Zoe's like, "What? Really?" River's like, "Duh." The person they're talking about is a man, so that wouldn't pass anyway. But if they're talking about a woman, would that pass? I think it wouldn't, because that's not their primary form of communication. Normally they talk. I might make an exception for that, though. However, some of the more militarily minded characters, Zoe, Mal, Jane, give little orders to each other, like, "I'm gonna go there, you go there," with gesture, facial expression, and that shouldn't count as a conversation. I mean, it's just a command, basically. So even if it were like two women giving these little commands to each other, and they're going to attack a woman or something, I don't think that should count. And then there's the issue of names. Do they have to be named? I'd say they'd have to be named unless it's a case where people don't usually get named. There are some shows that just don't name their characters. Or if they do, it takes a long time to find it out. And if the show dies suddenly, that can explain why a character never gets named. I mean, Monty Python had a lot of characters that were just referred to by description in the credits. Like, second man with a keen interest in birds. I'm gonna revisit the gender issue for the female people. I'm gonna say female characters, because saying women restricts it by age, and there might be a show with children. So, female characters, is that necessary entirely? I'm talking about ambiguous genders, but people who would otherwise be considered feminine, like Ellie and Let the Right One In. You know, the thing is that, Ellie's a boy who was castrated and then started living as a girl or something, and in the movie, Ellie is played by a cisgender female actress. Ellie doesn't appear to be male. Ellie makes various comments about not being a girl. That's hard for people to interpret because Ellie's also a vampire, and much older. So, I'm not a girl could be I'm a woman, or I'm a vampire. And though there is a shot of Ellie's scarred genital region, it's brief and people are expecting female genitalia and expect that that's what is there, so they just assume that's what they saw. So there are a lot of people who come out of the theater for Let the Right One In thinking that Ellie is a cis girl. If Ellie were to speak to a female character about something other than a male character, would that pass? I don't want to erase transgender identity. I don't want to do like many reviewers do with Boys Don't Cry and refer to it as a lesbian movie. If you think Ellie's a girl, and you have to read the book to find out that Ellie's a boy, does that really have a significant effect on feminine portrayal? I think if it's a hidden detail like that, then you should give perception a little more focus than trivia. So yeah, Let the Right One In doesn't pass anyway, but if Ellie talked to Virginia about vampirism, maybe that should pass. Then what about characters of completely ambiguous gender? Like in Ringworld, there's these Pearson puppeteers who have ambiguous gender. The protagonist, Louis Wu, thinks of the character Nessus as male, but isn't sure. I think the character / the writer is a bit sexist, and so can't conceive of a female being as capable as Nessus, so Nessus is coded as male, but it's unclear what sex Nessus is, plus Nessus has a very feminine voice. So if Lewis / the writer wasn't so sexist and thought of Nessus as a gender-neutral pronoun, or possibly thought of Nessus as she, and Nessus were to talk to Tila Brown about the ring world, as Nessus does in the book, would this count? I don't know. So my version of the Bechdel test would be something like, the media must have one or more characters who are coded as female, who have names if naming is a standard convention of the media, and communicate with each other using their primary form of such, with or without the participation of a character coded as male, about something other than a character or characters coded as male.